Good morning from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm at Sertoma Art Center / Park. We're right by Shelley Lake in the city of Raleigh. Um, it's actually an overcast, and it just doesn't matter. I don't know what to do to make this, if you will, what we can do to kind of tamp down on this sunshine, but at any rate, or this light. But I am now on chapter 9 from the Karlsevni Saga. That's at least how I'm going to be pronouncing it. From, if you will, the Norse adventures in, if you will, America. All right. So Karlsevni meets the natives. Now, I will tell you, this is going to be an interesting one. I've been anticipating this one very much. Let's get into it. Karlsevni meets the natives. Early one morning, as they were looking around, they caught sight of a great many skin-covered boats. The men in the boats were waving wooden sticks at the ships, and they were waving them in a sunrise direction. I would think that means that, let's say, a sun rises in the east. That almost sounds like counterclockwise, but I'm not sure. Anyway, it sounded very much as if they were threshing grain. Then Karlsevni exclaimed, "What could this mean?" Snorri Thorbrandsson answered, "It may be that this is a signal of peace. So let us take a white shield and lift it up before them." So they did, while the others rode up to them, gazed at them with astonishment, and then went on land. They were dark men and ugly, with unkempt hair on their heads. They had large eyes and broad cheeks. After they had stayed a while and marveled, they rowed off to the south of the cape. Karlsevni and his men had built their shelters above the lake, some of them close to the water, others farther away, and here they stayed that winter. There was no snowfall whatever, and all their cattle grazed by themselves in the open. So, in other words, they actually brought cattle, if you will, to America. There was no cattle there before, so. But early one morning, as spring drew near, they saw before their eyes a vast number of skin boats rowing around the cape from the south. The bay was dotted with them, as if it had been strewn with pieces of charcoal, and on every one the sticks were waving. Karlsevni's men raised their shields, and when the parties met, they started trading with each other. These people wanted most of all to buy red cloth. They also wanted to buy swords and spears, but that was forbidden by Karlsevni and Snorri. All right, reader's note, you can imagine why that's the case, right? They don't want this stuff turned against them. Okay, back to the reading. In exchange for the cloth, they offered untanned furs and gray pelts. And for each fur, they got a span's length, about 9 inches, of the cloth, which they tied around their heads. This went on for a while until the Norsemen began to run short of cloth. And by the way, you should know this already. Clearly, Norsemen is the same thing as Vikings. Then they cut it into smaller strips until each was no more than a finger's width. And yet the Skraelings, bracketed here, as the Norsemen called the savages, unbracket, gave as much for it, or even more. In the Greenland Saga, it is told that the Norsemen sold the savages milk, and actually I have read that one for you. Karlsevni asked the women to carry out vessels of milk and other dairy products. At once the savages wanted to buy this and nothing else. So the trading turned out in this way, that the savages carried their purchases away in their stomachs, while Karlsevni and his men had possession of their furs. Then it happened that a bull belonging to Karlsevni and his people ran out of the woods and bellowed furiously. The savages were so terrified that they ran to their boats and rowed along the shore to the south. For 3 weeks there was no trace of them, but at the end of this time, a vast fleet of Skraeling boats hove into sight, rushing from the south like an angry torrent. This time the savages were waving sticks in a counter sunwise direction and were yelling at the tops of their voices. This time Karlsevni and his men took their red shields and held them aloft. The savages leaped from their boats. The two parties met and started fighting. It was a furious battle, for the savages had war slings, so probably slingshots or maybe bow and arrows, to help them. Karlsevni and Snorri watched them lift up a pole with a huge knob on the end, black in color, about the size of a sheep's belly, which flew up on land over the heads of the men and made a frightening noise when it fell. At this, a great fear seized Karlsevni and his followers, so that they thought only of flight and retreated up the stream. It seemed to them that they were being attacked by savages on every side, and this did not let up before they got back to some cliffs, where they fought a hard battle. Okay, Freitas. Now, I want to talk about this here for a second. I didn't bring up, this is the first time in this, that we have come across Freitas. So Freitas is the sister of Leif Erikson and the daughter of Eric the Red, Erik Thorvaldsson. Her name would be Freitas Ersdata. Freda, the daughter of Eric. Okay, let's go back. Freitas came out and saw them retreating. She shouted to them, "Why are you running away from these puny fellows, fine men as you are? It looks like to me as if you should be able to cut them down like cattle. If I had weapons, I think I could fight better than any of you." All right, folks. This is, I don't know, I'm not this kind of person, but I will tell you this is something else what's about to happen. If you're not familiar with this, get ready. This may be somewhere around PG, if not PG-13, although I won't be swearing or anything. But this is some mind-blowing stuff. Okay? Mind-blowing stuff. They paid no attention to what she was saying. How'd your kids? Well, I don't know. The kids might be okay, but just to let you know, it's about to drop. She tried to follow, but had trouble keeping up with them, for she was with child. Editor's note, clearly pregnant. She went after them into the woods, and the savages started toward her. In front of her lay a dead man, Thorbrand Snorri's son. So Thorbrand Snorri's son, whose head had been crushed by a flat rock. Beside him lay his sword. Get ready, folks. Here it comes. And she picked it up to defend herself. When the savages approached, this is some racist stuff to say savages, but anyway, but when the savages approached, she pulled out her breast from under her dress and slapped them with the naked sword. At this, the savages were so appalled that they ran down to their boats and rowed away. Boy, that's a boy. Hang on a second. All right. Well, I'm going to see if I can finish this in 20 minutes. So here we go. Karlsevni and his men now came up to her and praised her good fortune. 2 men had fallen of his party, and a great many of the savages, although the latter were far superior in number. They now returned to their camp, dressed their wounds, and talked over who the host might be that had last attacked them on land. It seemed to them as if there were 2 attacking parties. But now they saw that one of these must have been a delusion. The savages found one of the dead with an axe beside him. One of them picked up the axe and hewed at a tree with it. One after another tried it, and it seemed to them a great treasure because it cut so well. Then one of them took and struck a rock with it, so that the axe broke. They decided then that it was useless. That's what it says. Since it could not withstand stone, and tossed it away. Karlsevni and his men were now convinced that even though the country was richly endowed in nature, they would always live in dread and turmoil because of the enmity of those who lived there before. So they made ready to break up and return to their own country. They sailed along the coast to the north. On the shore, they found 5 savages asleep, dressed in leather jackets, and beside them containing animal marrow mixed with blood. Karlsevni judged that these men must have been sent out as spies from this country and killed them. Later, they found a cape that abounded in animals, and it looked as if the cape were solidly crusted with dung from all the animals that lay there at night. Then they reached Strimfjord, and there they found plenty of all they needed. Some said Bjarne and Gudrid had stayed here with 100 men and gone no farther, while Karlsevni and Snorri sailed to the north with 40 men, stayed at Hop just 2 months, and returned the same summer. Karlsevni set out with one ship to search for Thorhall the hunter, while the others stayed in Strimfjord. They sailed north of Kilness and then headed west, with the land on their port side. They found nothing but a forest wilderness, with hardly a clearing among the trees. When they had sailed a long time, they found a river running from east to west into the sea. Here they steered for the river mouth and landed on the southern bank. According to the Karlsevni Saga, Thorvald Eriksson was killed here, and not on the voyage on his own, and not on that voyage of his own, which has been recounted earlier. After this, they sailed away to the north again. They concluded that the mountains they found in this country were the same as those they had seen at Hop, and this belief was confirmed by the fact that the distance from Strimfjord to both these places was the same. They returned to Strimfjord and lived there the third winter. Just to keep you in mind, folks, we're looking at basically between the years 1012 to 1013 AD, or in the Common Era, CE. All right, but this winter there was much quarreling among the men, and the women were the cause of it. More things change, more things stay the same, right? For those who had no women began attacking those who did. A son named Snorri was born to Karlsevni the first autumn, and he was 3 winters old when they left. As they sailed from Vinland, they got a favoring south wind and made their way to Markland. Here they found 5 savages, a bearded fellow, 2 women, and 2 children. Karlsevni and his men captured the boys, but the rest got away and sank into the ground. They took the 2 boys, taught them to speak, and baptized them. The boys said that their mother's name was Bethilde, and their father Uvage. They said that kings ruled the land of the Skrælings, and one of them was named Alvedama, and the other Avedudita. They said there were no houses there, and that people slept under rocks or in caves. They said there was country on the opposite side from their own, where people went about in white clothes, uttered loud cries, and carried poles with banners to fasten them. It is generally believed that this must have been white man's land or Greater Ireland. So they returned to Greenland and stayed with Eric the Red that winter. Alrighty, well, I said I was going to keep it under 20, and so promise made, promise kept. I may have some words I want to talk about later, but for right now, that is it. And so long from Raleigh, North Carolina. Goodbye.